As somebody who's worked in redistricting in California since 2010 at the federal, state, and local level, I thought I'd share my perspective on what this latest salvo in the redistricting wars means and where I think this is all going. So, what is happening with the California redistricting process? Where are we? When are these new maps going to go to the voters? What the heck are we voting on? Is any of this possible before the 2026 midterms? The short answer to that is yes, but here's the longer answer. So the California legislature will vote on Thursday, August 21st, on whether to approve the new congressional maps that have been drawn for the 2026 midterms. So that is the first thing you need to understand, okay, is that the maps have already been drawn. And this is something that I take issue with, and I think it's something important for you to understand. One man, Paul Mitchell, the owner of political firm PDI, which does the political data and voter files for campaigns of both parties across California, he was tasked by the legislature with drawing these new maps essentially in secret with no public comment, no transparency. And then those maps were published by the Assembly website about 10 days ago. I'll put it up on screen, right here so you can see the map for yourself and see what your district, if you're in California, what it might look like. And they have a proposed ballot initiative that would amend the state constitution to say that we would adopt these maps wholesale. First of all, we're not saying there will be a new map making process. That's already been done. We're just voting up or down on the measure. Then it says that this new map would only take effect if another state also changes their map in the middle of the decade, which Texas is doing, which makes that part moot. But crucially, it says that this new map will only take effect through 2030, and then we will revert to an independent redistricting commission. Now, the reason they did that is that voters have twice voted not just to implement the independent redistricting commission, but to maintain it after numerous attempts on the ballot to strip it and return to the old system of creating district maps. Now, if I believed that this would really be temporary, I might be inclined to agree with President Obama, who said that this was a restrained, measured, proportionate response to what's happening in Texas. The trouble is that the underlying conditions that have led to this crisis, which is the 2021 Supreme Court decision that made it so that partisan gerrymandering wasn't just de facto okay, it is de jure fine and dandy for you to gerrymander the other party completely out of existence. That is not going away. On top of that, after the 2030 census, there will be a reapportionment, which is when the number of congressional districts in each state is readjusted to conform with how much different states have gained or lost population in the preceding 10 years. California is expected to lose up to 4 congressional districts, which means that these newly drawn districts that will have newly invested members of Congress who want to keep their seats, they will beg and plead to be able to keep suspending the Independent Redistricting Commission's work so that they can be protected in the next 10 years. And so what is ultimately going to happen is the same thing that happened with when income taxes were raised back in 2012 at the state level, or in LA City when they raised the sales tax and they said it would be temporary only to make it permanent a few years later. When something is done on a temporary basis that helps politicians do something that is politically unpopular, it is almost assured that it will actually become a permanent feature of the political landscape. And the Independent Redistricting Commission was always something that was done because it was the right thing to do. And in the knowledge that this was somewhat of a unilateral disarmament because other states were not adopting these independent redistricting commissions. But even in the absence of the rest of the country adopting an ungerrymandered way of creating political district maps, I happen to agree with Governor Schwarzenegger when he says that 2 wrongs don't make a right, and that ultimately, by getting into the mud with the Texas legislature on this, yes, we might be able to cancel them out in the short term. But there are more Republican seats out there that can be gerrymandered, especially if the Voting Rights Act gets thrown out, than what is available in Democratic seats, even if states like New York are successfully able to change their constitutions in time for the 2030 census. So ultimately, I don't think that this is going to be successful. It makes our democracy worse, and I oppose it. If you want to know my honest opinion on the matter, I see this entire thing as a pretty cynical ploy by Governor Gavin Newsom to boost his national profile ahead of what everybody assumes is going to be a 2028 presidential campaign. I don't think that this is good for democracy. I don't think it actually improves Democrats' chances in the midterms. I think that if we look to history, the party that is out of power tends to win 20 to 30 seats in the midterms, and 5 seats from Republicans is not going to cancel that out. So while I strongly disagree with what Texas is doing, and I think it sets a terrible precedent, I don't think the answer is for California to go tit for tat, thereby justifying a nationwide race to the bottom that ultimately Democrats will end up losing anyway. I think that our best bet is to activate our base, win back independent voters, show people what the impact of the Trump administration's policies are on their daily lives, and do the real hard work of politics. Because what I'm seeing in the online discourse right now, which is essentially both Democrats and Republicans saying that these gerrymandering salvos are necessary because if the other party wins the election, it is the end of the republic, that is super dangerous and corrosive and mean-spirited and wrong-headed, and ultimately it sets us closer and closer down the path to a national divorce, which I am strongly, strongly against. So if you're listening to this and you live in California, I understand why it might feel good to finally be able to have a tangible way to fight back against an administration that so many Democrats feel is doing uniquely terrible damage to the country. But I am here to say that I think we need to take the political temperature down a little bit, that there are other ways to fight what this administration is doing without getting into the mud with the pigs on this. And just like the old saying goes, when you get in the mud with the pig, you get dirty and the pig's just happy. So let's not do this, please.